Hi, you guys. For those of you that come to the live classes, I'm so sorry. I had long meetings this afternoon and I just was too late. So, anyway, it's actually a really short lecture. So, I don't know if that's any consolation, but it's a really interesting one. And it's just sort of like dovetailing off of my lecture from last week. If you saw the neoclassical lecture from last week, but this one basically is focusing on um, Robert Adam and England. Okay. And I just think that he's so interesting. And if somebody this week I'm going to put up the sign up for people to sign up for your projects for the final actually. And you can choose a subject matter. And if somebody would like to do Robert Adam, he's a very interesting architect and he's got a lot of really interesting work, and it's cool. So we're in England right now. We talked about um, mostly the French influence on the neoclassical, and some of it gets a little gaudy, but then some of it's very pared down. It's very interesting I think, in terms of its graphic nature and its flattening of things. It seems in a lot of ways very modern to me because of its graphic and sort of flat nature, and it's not big and bulky, and it doesn't feel heavy. It's very either painted very light colors or even pastel colors, and you'll see in Robert Adams' work the lovely, like really interesting, fun pastel colors. Which, if you watch the movie Emma with the actress Anya, I think it's Anya Taylor Joy. Yes, it's she's quite the popular actress. But anyway, so she's in it, and every costume that she wears and every interior is like the color of ice cream or Easter or something. It's really fun to watch. Anyway, so if we're in England, this is Queen Anne, and this is an example of a piece of furniture that you would find during that period of time. And if you'll notice, you can see some echoes of the Baroque, right? That late Baroque, that Rococo, right? And the reason we know this is because we have the shell, right? And then we have the knee, and it's a cabriole leg, that curved cabriole leg. And then we have the shell on the knee. And then we've got this claw and ball leg. Now, this chair is based on the idea of this Chinese chair. And, pretty simple squared off chair, but very influential in terms of styles. And you notice that this is a really interesting chair. You can see where the wear marks are. So this was curved. It's really a beautiful, beautiful chair. So if we're thinking about what is sort of the facet or characteristics of this time period, it would be the sorry, I lost my emblematic of this time period. It would be inspired by aspects of France, Italy, and Asia. So there's a bit of classics, right? But then we mix it with a little bit of the Rococo, right? But it's pretty pared down. And you'll notice the splat has a slight urn shape to it. So it's a really interesting shape. And so, the furniture really becomes sort of like a mix of styles that then becomes its own style. Um, and then we have classical motifs with variations in architecture. And you're going to see a lot of these sort of like motifs moved from one sort of where it would normally be applied, in let's say the Renaissance. It's applied in a different way to a different part of the interior or a wall or a ceiling. Um, I think it's really interesting once you start kind of looking forward and looking back, and you notice, oh, that, that shape being on a wall is different, but it's like patterns and repeating patterns sort of make their way into different formats, different media. Anyway, so I'll show you. So here's other examples of pieces of furniture, and you notice this is an upholstered, but it's really interesting how you get the C, and you're still getting those cabriole legs. We have pad feet, and again the shell. So a lot of those motifs just keep coming back. Um, and then here's a fiddle shaped splat. We've got a vase. We've got fan motif, pretty common. And a lot of times you'll see pattern. You'll see a lot of different like geometric shapes that sort of they share those sort of bisected sort of areas. I'll show them to you. Here's a broken pediment, which we've also seen during Rococo. And look at these cute little scrolled feet. And we've already looked at some claw and ball. Some examples of very intricate drawer pulls, an OG bracket foot, which we've seen bracket legs before in other pieces of furniture. This is more of an OG. When you use the word OG, it's more of a curve. And then this is just a straight up, just kind of a bracket foot. So then going to Robert Adams, super interesting architect. So he was the type of architect, interior designer who do both, who would do the exterior and the interior. And so very the whole look very cohesive, comprehensive. So I really enjoy looking at his work. So he studied in Italy. So definitely really steeped in all like knowing a lot about antiquities, knowing a lot about objects, really liking objects, a very simple pared down classicism. It almost seems like he thinks of those objects as sculptural pieces that are worthy of their own patterns within within the whole. Um, and So you'll see some of his work. So a lot of plaster work, a lot of shapes in plaster, molded plaster. Um, you know, he really goes really far with it, and it's really really cool. So down here we've got the urns, right? But then what happens is it gets abstracted, and down at the bottom of the urns becomes upside down laurel leaves, or acanthus leaves, most likely, coming down, but then abstracting themselves into some floral, almost like foliate swags. And then we have the palmettes, right? And then it just repeats. So it's this whole sort of graphic, repetitive, abstracted, melded together pattern, which is really, I think, really beautiful. I love it in the molded or carved. It looks molded plaster. But then look at this. We've got swags. We've got foliate. We've got all kinds of leaves, designs just swirling around. Really, really pretty. This is a very common pattern that he would repeat constantly, pattern or a dish shape, sort of like maybe like a platter, really. And then lots of like cute little cupids, or putti with ribbon motifs. And if you recall from last week, we looked at all the chairs and how beautiful that ribbon pattern, how popular that ribbon pattern was. And so that's the beginning of Robert Adam. And so here's some of his ceiling work. So very intricate paintings. So, classical like statues, classical poses, um, sort of what they maybe thought of in terms of color. And I love that they're, having color, adding color to these sort of classical poses and women that they're using, and then a scene. And then just that, the molded, carved plasterwork with the swags and the motifs. And then look, the fans. At the fans, you got the foliate along the border here. We got some rosettes. Um, I can't really see what's going on there, but you know what? I think what that is like a wave pattern there all around here. So really, really cool. And I love his sketches. You can't really call them sketches. They're like etchings or drawings or something like that. But I love how he does these studies. And so this is how he would do it. He would work out the exterior of the house, and these are the the panels that I want. So he's got this panel here, right, on the side of Kenwood, and then he's drawn it here. This is exactly how I want it to look. And then he's got the columns, and he's got the beautiful friezes, and then he's got all of these details, in here in the capitals. Um, and then even these little broken, the way he's like broken it, like it's, some antiquity that he's dug up. I love the way he's done that. It's just like such an interesting way of thinking about things, because he probably was there. He probably, did see things, excavated when he was studying. So it's really interesting the way he does that. But I just love how seeing this study, seeing how he's done the guidelines and the measuring, and he's sketched it all out and he's labeled it. And then you see that finished work. Now here we've got the Greek key, the fretwork. We've got, the palmettes again and the upside down leaves. And then all of that, like the wave patterns, the swags. It's really, really cool. But notice how flat it is, right? These pilasters are really flat. They look like they might be like 1.5 inches deep. So it's just a flattened, sort of like spare, very soft look. This is not a heavy piece of architecture. It's very, very soft um, looking, and the color is very soft, and the texture looks very soft. It's a really different, really interesting. To me, looks pretty modern. So he was very influential in this style, in terms of both England and the United States. So look at this color, these pale pastels. Now, obviously, this photograph, it's like they could have redone this like the day before and then taken the photograph, but obviously this was somewhat close to what he intended. Um, Again, look at the ceilings, the paneling. Now, if you think about the Renaissance and you think about the heavy ceilings, would have either been, wood, and then as we moved into the Baroque, they would have heavily painted or decorated that ceiling. But then at the edge of the ceiling where that meets the wall, you would have had a heavy, heavy line. And then you would have had, some paneling work. So it's interesting how the ceilings sort of change, how the walls are left so much more bare. And then the ceiling, he uses the ceiling as his place to put his paneling and his the bulk of that decoration. And he leaves the walls and the walls free. And then you see, the beauty, the simplicity of the pillars, and you see the classical orders here. And then he sort of recreates that whole sort of like kind of Romanesque dome here in this end of the library. So it's really, really pretty. Here's a better view of that whole situation. And then you notice there's just pedestals all over with, beautiful busts on them, um, which was, very, very popular. And, you kind of wonder if this became the period, because it became so popular, this style, this neoclassical style, if this became the period where people really started to um, feel that all of the classical look was this really pale sort of plaster color, or just white marble, where that became, really cemented in people's minds. Um, I would be really interested to know that. Again, the walls are just, like a gorgeous wash of, pastel color. And then you've got the only decor that you have, or the only decoration, applied decoration, is the chair rail, which itself is, architectonic in terms of, it's got a pediment, it's got a frieze. And then it kind of looks like I'm seeing on this edge of this trim, I'm seeing like a dental molding, much like that, you might see in classical Greek architecture. And then notice there's just no paneling on this wall, except there's paneling on the doors. These are, doors with 6 panels. Um, and then you have the furniture that has that very clean lines, very architectonic in terms of the pillars. We've got the pediment, the frieze, you've got, these decorated swirls. This could, be a bird. And then you've got pedestals with urns on top. And I love the way he's used this as the only opportunity really to use like a dark color that matches the depth of this painting, which to me means like, let's everybody, I want you just to look at this painting here on this wall. And so I think it's really pretty. And again, just feels really pretty modern to me. Like I feel like I could walk into, obviously a very, fancy house, and feel like this was, something that somebody had just done, and think it was really pretty. Um, so same house. This might even be the same color, but it renders a little bit differently. But look at this amazing, talk about comprehensive, talk about like cohesive design sort of ideas. And he's got his motifs, his pattern, the dish, right? The oval. And he's basically placed that in terms of a big, huge, window or skylight in a house. And then he's even on the inside, as it shoots up, he's got swags and molded plaster in here. It's just, gorgeous. And then think about how possibly revolutionary this was to do, just to do a crown molding. It's intricate, but then to do paneling. Now, most likely, these bigger ones held paintings, um, but really, I mean, how interesting, how modern that looks, how repeated that is now. People like to put all kinds of different wall paneling, um, and not necessarily put anything in it. Um, but it's really cool. And this beautiful iron stair rail, with these like palmettes and these upside down motifs, and then the center motif, just really, really gorgeous. And these are just some floor plans of those rooms. Classically Adamesque, and extremely symmetrical. The only thing that's a little bit off is the orangerie and the library are just slightly different shapes, but you know what? It's not really, because they made up for it on the roof overhang on this veranda. So really, if you folded this over, the edge of the library would probably meet with the edge of this roof line. So that's pretty clever. Um, I love that. I love that symmetry. just think that's so satisfying. Again, on that second floor, the upper the upper floor. And if you notice, it's really interesting. So it's like you walk in, you walk into this house, here's the portico. So it's that, classic Greek portico with the columns. And you walk in and you got this very large entrance hall, right? So it's super grand and it's just going to really make a statement, right? And you go up the great stairs. I'm sure that what we saw is beautiful. Um, and then all these other rooms, the dining room, music room, all these rooms are, quite large. The library, we saw that. It's beautiful with those half domes or those domes. And then you go upstairs and just look how interesting the non-public parts of the house were. And even if you look at, I don't think they show it. They don't show the kitchen. Most likely the kitchen was in what is the service ring wing, or might even have been in the basement because kitchens weren't a place where you would go to. Um, but up here, look at how small in comparison to everything else. Even if you look in comparison to the entrance hall, how small the bed chambers were. Um, so it's really interesting. I also want to know who Miss Murray is. I've actually never looked at that and seen that it says Miss Murray. Miss Murray leads to the ladies and to Lord. So I think I got to do a little reading on that and get back to you. That's pretty interesting. Anyway, but if you'll notice, this was a huge, huge project that he worked on, and you'll see it coded here. These areas coded in like kind of salmony pink, light pink, or like 1700. Then the work just kept going on this place on Kenwood. So it's like a very, very large project. So if anybody is interested in doing a project on Kenwood, that would be really fun too. So that is actually it for tonight. It's pretty short. I am going to open up the sign up sheet for you guys to tell me what you would like to do for your final project. And please, if you're stumped or you don't know what to do, but just know that when you click on the sheet and you open it up, it's a Google Doc. On the left side is just ideas of what you could pick. Like if for some reason you're stumped and don't know what to pick, look in your textbook too. You can look in the textbook. But look on this side, on the left side, and just think of ideas. Then on the right side, it'll say your name, and then you can put the subject matter that you're going to study. Okay. So don't feel like you have to put your name on the same line as the thing on the left side. The left side is just ideas. The right side, in the middle is where you put your name, and then the far right is where you put your project. Okay. So if you have any questions or if you need anything else, let me know. And I'm like really enjoying looking at all your drawings. I think you're doing a great job. The assignment that's due next is an assignment called the 18th Century Concurrent Study. And so what I want you to do is I gave you some sources, lots of really cool museum sources and auction sites and things like that. You can look up 3 pieces. And what I'd like you to do is 3 pieces that are similar. So like not a chair, a table, and an armoire. I want you to pick like a chair, or a table. And I want you to find 3 pieces that were like made in different countries, different, slightly different times in the 18th century, and compare and contrast, because this is when things start getting really kind of all over the map and influences, and a lot of people, there's a lot of different kinds of styles that people are being influenced by. And so it's really fun just to kind of see what was going on in different countries. And since we can't like look at everything, it's just really nice to have everybody pick different items, and then we can look at it and learn. So that's what I want you to do. But if you have any questions, let me know, and have a great night. Thanks. Bye.